Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is our first official, I guess you could say official, a first official episode for the Kingdom Key series. I'm so excited to be doing this. I'm really happy that you guys, just after my first video, already submitted some of your setups and stuff on khuxtracker.com and some of your albums and whatnot. I found it really cool. And I'm really looking forward to this series, and well, we're starting today. Just a quick notice, I am trying to do at least one Kingdom Key video every single week if possible. I know I didn't exactly get one out in time this last week. I meant to try and get one out during somewhere near the beginning and middle of the week, but due to various scheduling on my part, I wasn't able to get it out till today. So don't worry, I'm trying to get one out at least once a week. It's not canceled or anything. It just got slightly delayed. Yeah, without further ado, let's get started with the episode. If you'd like to get a video featured on the series, then just send me an email following the instructions on the screen. Essentially what it is that you guys can send me your submissions of your albums on khuxtracker.com containing all of your individual medals for me to look at. Ask me questions related to setups, and I'll personally go over in a video like this one my thoughts and advice on creating the best setup solely based completely on what you have. Alright, so for today's episode, we're actually looking at a user submission called Josiah Grant. Now for Josiah's question, this is what he wrote to me. He wrote that he was a hardcore player and that he would like me to look at a level 32 fairy stars setup, and he asked me, could you help make a setup against those stupid one-hit KO bosses and a Coliseum build, and he sent me his link. Kindest regards, Josiah. And first of all, I want to say, Josiah, thank you so much for writing a very polite and appropriate email. Okay, it really means a lot. I know a lot of you guys, I can tell, get super think that you need to be like super polite to me like I'm some big corporation or whatever, but just to let you know, don't worry guys, I am not some big shot corporation or whatever. You don't have to be exactly the most formal, though. Like, I would appreciate that you're at least polite and respectful like Josiah was here, okay? But you don't need to like write me like, you know, full business style type of formal email or whatever, okay? Don't worry about that. But there is something at the very least that I want to point out about his email, just for future reference for everyone else looking to submit for the series, which is right here in the title of the email. Right here, he said that he was a hardcore player. Now, if you remember back in the beginning of the video, I talked about I showed on screen what you need to do to send me like your submission and whatnot. And I said that you need to tell me your player type. By player type, I'm asking for whether or not you're a beginner, intermediate, or veteran player. The whole point of that is to give me a general sense of idea of where you are in the game and how much knowledge you have, so that way I can give you a little bit more appropriate advice towards what you could try and do to help your setups and whatnot. So, like in Josiah's case, he mentioned that he's a hardcore player. Being a hardcore player doesn't really tell me much, because think about it. When the game first came out, I consider myself a hardcore player because I'm a hardcore player of the Kingdom Hearts series in general. But realistically, because the game just came out, I was a noob. I was a complete noob. I was learning just like everybody else. So when you tell me that you're hardcore, it doesn't really tell me too much. But don't worry about that, Josiah. It's not a big deal. It's just simply to point it out to everybody else who's watching the video. But anyways, let's get started with the video and Josiah's setup. So this is Josiah's album that he submitted to me right here. And it's not a very big list. I don't know if this is actually how much medals he actually has in the game, or if this is just a submission of all his best medals, okay? I will work with whatever you guys send me. Of course, I will obviously say that the more medals and whatnot and more details about your albums and medals that you possess in game that you can give me, the more accurate of a setup that I can present to you guys in these videos. In Josiah's case, he was asking about trying to help create a setup for a one-hit KO like type of boss, as well for a Coliseum build. Now, the good thing about this is that typically there's not going to be too much of a difference between the two. And when it comes to Coliseum, you're basically trying to find out what are the limits of your current medals and setups and whatnot. It's like a test of how strong you are. In retrospective to that, one-hit KO bosses typically are along the same difficulty of like Coliseum type enemies and whatnot. Okay, you're gonna see like level 1000, 2000 type enemies and all that sort of stuff. You're gonna have to see a lot of high HP bars, all that type of stuff. So typically the same type of setups that work for Coliseum will also work for one-hit KO type bosses. The only difference between the two is that in Coliseum you typically want more AoE and random target type medals. And single target medals will only be used for like the last slot or two. Whereas for one-hit KO type bosses, they're typically just the one boss by themselves, kind of like a raid boss. So you can actually do a full setup of pure single target medals if you really wanted to. Okay, that's pretty much the only difference between the two. So knowing that, we're gonna actually take a look at your medals and what are some of the type of setups that you could probably best use. Now, going through your album real quick, I noticed that you don't really have too many Gilded Medals. I know it doesn't really show right here on the screen just yet. Rosie hasn't been able to update the album feature just yet, though she's looking to try to hit that sometime fairly soon. At the very least, these are the Gilded Medals that you had, just for everybody else that's watching, just so that they're aware. You have your Toon Roxas Gilded, you have your HD Zexing Gilded, you have both your Riku's Gilded, you have your Mickey Gilded, you have your Neku Gilded, you have your 0.2 Gilded, you have your Orin, where is he? He's Gilded. Your HD Shio somewhere down in the bottom, and your HD Nominate. Where are they? So, as well as these two are Gilded. Okay, those are your Gilded medals. Typically, my first reaction whenever anybody asks me for advice on how to make good setups, my first gut reaction is to ask you, what are your Gilded medals, okay? Because realistically, it's the Gilded medals are gonna be end up being your quote-unquote best medals. Even if it's like a tier 2 or 3 medal, if it's Gilded, chances are it's gonna be doing more damage or doing just more in general compared to any other type of medal. The only exception to this are like game-changing type of buffer and debuffer medals, such as like Kyrie type medals. So knowing this, okay, I went ahead and I created the best Fairy Stars setup that I could, based purely off what you have that you currently sent to me. And this is the setup I ended up making. So we have your Toon Roxas right here, who has extra attack, by the way, which is fantastic. HD Nominee, who's copying Riku over here, which is also fantastic. I absolutely laughed out loud when I saw that your HD Nominee has 2 extra attack traits. I don't know whether to call you like the luckiest person in the world or like the most unluckiest person in the world. After seeing that, I just find that really hilarious to look at. But nonetheless, it's beneficial to you because you get to use the extra attack at the very least. I don't know if you're aware, but I would assume you are. But for others watching who may be new to the game, extra attack does not stack. So if you have 2 extra attack traits, like his HD Nominee, they don't stack. You're only going to use extra attack once. But at the very least, on the Fairy Stars, this is actually fantastic. Because that means that at the very least by the slot 3, by the time you use Riku in slot 3, you already have -6 upright defense debuffs, which is fantastic. And the fact that Toon Soar over here is giving you +2 upright buffs because it has extra attack, and he's maxing out all your buffer strengths, you don't even have to worry about, like, let's put that -6 up right there, okay? So now by 4th slot, we have HTP, and I'll explain in a second why he's there, even though he has, like, absolutely nothing. He's the most vanilla medal in the world right now, with no guilt dots, no traits, no skill. And then we have the Neku, illustrated Neku right here. He has no skill, which is a bit of an issue, but it's not too much an issue. At the very least, he's Gilded. However, I will state that at the very least, when looking at your King Mickey over here, your King Mickey ES, he has extra attack too, which is actually pretty good. That's going to be very helpful in terms of other Keyblades, such as like Fenrir or whatnot, if you ever choose to go that route. I will state at the very least that it kind of triggered me a little bit, seeing the fact that almost none of these medals whatsoever have any attack skills whatsoever. It low-key triggered me, I'm not gonna lie. The fact that your Riku has second chance 3 on top of your Mickey having second chance 3, your HD Nominee has nothing, and your Roxas over here has defense boost too. Like I was low-key triggered. But that's just coming from me as a veteran player, okay? The whole point of this series is to be able to help you guys out and teach you what's going on, all that good jazz. Second chance skills, pretty much, you normally don't put them on very many medals at all. Like literally, I very rarely ever put second chance on my medals. And the only medals I ever put them on are essentially my medals that I know are going to be on almost every single Keyblade setup that I'm ever going to have, period. So when you think about that, what are the type of medals that end up fitting that criteria? Okay, well, looking at your album over here from what you submitted to me anyways, okay, I can see right off the bat that your best game, quote-unquote, game-changing type medals that you possess are going to be the 0.2 Kairi and the Toon Roxas, okay? Toon Roxas over here is strictly better than the 0.2 Kairi, so just naturally, you're just not going to use 0.2 Kairi, and you're going to be using Toon Roxas almost all the time, especially because of the fact he has extra attack. So, knowing that he's going to be on almost every single one of your setups, regardless of what Keyblade or slot you're using him on, you're better off putting second chance on your Toon Roxas instead. At least until you get a better game-changing type medal, such as the Kairi or Shioni X, for example. I will state that I had a few difficulties trying to figure out what would be like the best type of setup when putting together your Fairy Star setup, okay? I ran into quite a few issues. The first one being that, well, you don't have too many viable medals that bring general defense down debuffs to the table. Like, when I take a look at your medals, there's not too many medals that support a significant amount of general defense down. Here's the problem when it comes to your setup, okay? Because of the fact that your main buffer slash debuffer medal and whatnot is your Roxas over here, but he only provides buffs. He doesn't provide any debuffs whatsoever. That means that part of your setup, the first few medals of your setup, are going to have to be focusing on making up for the lack of debuffs, okay? Which is why we have Naminé over here copying Riku. Riku already provides a -7 magic debuff, which is great. So Naminé doesn't benefit from that because the cap is 7. However, because Riku also provides a -2 upright debuff, having Naminé copy that twice means by the third slot, like I mentioned before, you'll have a -6 upright debuff, okay? Now, realistically, the higher the level of the enemy, such as like with Colosseum and one-hit KO type bosses like you asked about, your main focus is to try to focus on the general defense down debuffs, such as like, for example, with HTP over here. HTP provides a -3 general defense down debuff, which is absolutely essential when you're fighting against the stronger enemies. It kind of sucked. I was trying really hard to figure out what worked for you the best, okay? I originally tried using your, Wisdom form Sora over here because of the fact that, well, he provides a -2 general defense down. On top of he fits in the third slot of your Keyblade, okay? And I was hoping that would work with the same type of setup and whatnot. But I kind of found out and realized that Riku just ends up being better because of the fact that Riku just ends up providing way more debuffs than your Wisdom form Sora does. So even though typically general defense down just vastly outdoes any other type of attribute debuffs, which is what Riku provides, because of the fact that Riku provides a significantly larger amount of debuffs than the Wisdom form Sora does, the Riku ends up doing vastly better than your Wisdom form Sora, which is why Riku is there. So going for HTP, because of the fact that we have this going on there, like I just explained, I still wanted to try somehow to provide a general defense down. So we have HTP to do that, because he's the only medal that works for the 4th slot that could do that. Even though he has absolutely nothing on him, which feels so cringy for me as a veteran player. I like never use any medal that's not guilted at the very least. And even better, even though we have Neku right here, if you can get a copy of the key art bonds metal, you can actually do more damage. So take a look at this current setup right here based on what you currently have. According to the website, this does an average of about 17 million damage, okay? And keep in mind that the website is not an accurate representation how much damage you'll do in game. It's more meant to be used as purely a comparison tool. So seeing that this setup does about 16.9 million damage, if you were to replace Neku over here, even though he's guilted and whatnot, but has no skill, that's also relevant, okay? If you were to replace Neku with a key art bonds medal, even if it has no traits, no skills, and no dots, it's still gonna do more damage overall. Alright, so you can see in this setup, all I did was change the 5th medal. I replaced the Neku with the key art bonds. It increases the amount to about 17.3 million damage. Whereas the old one did about 16.9 million damage. Now, it's not a significant amount, I know, but imagine how much extra damage that would also mean if you could guilt the key art bonds copy metal, which is not a bad investment. Any copy metal whatsoever is always a good investment in the long run to want to guilt and make it perfect. But just a vanilla bonds metal alone would increase your setup. One, it's a copy metal, so it's copying Pete, which means that instead of just the +3 general defense down, you're bumping that up to a to a -6 general defense down. Okay, and that ends up making a world of a difference when it comes to hard enemies such as like Coliseum and one-hit KO type bosses and whatnot. So that's pretty much your Fairy Star setup and why it's so good. Now, after stating all of that, I do want to state that after looking through all of your medals, because what I usually try is to do is like I like to go according to what you guys asked for, but at the same time I also want to try and see if there is any type of other possible setup that can go above and beyond, or is just better in general than what you asked for or what you're looking for and what you currently have available, blah blah blah. Okay, so I ended up making a really good Mughal Glory setup for you instead. And the cool part is it's almost exactly the same as your Fairy Star setup, almost the exact same medals. It's just slightly different. The only difference with this setup is the fact that now I have an HD Vanitas here that you have in your album, and I took out the Neku. That's like literally it. Like it almost the rest of it is exactly the same. Now keep in mind that for this Mughal Glory setup, this is a level 35 Mughal Glory, and this setup right here does about 17.7 million damage. But even if I brought this down to level 32 like your Fairy Stars is at, and I calculate that, it's still higher than your Fairy Star setup. Your Fairy Star setup, just as a reminder, is at 16.9 million, whereas at level 32 Mughal Glory will be at 17.3 million. Let's say that your Keyblade has to be lower than that. Let's bring it all the way down to 25. Let's see how much that does, okay? This does about 16.7 million damage, which is fairly close to your Fairy Star setup. And that's without putting any gems whatsoever invested into your Mughal Glory. If you put just a little bit of gems into your Mughal Glory, let's bring it up to 28, for example, okay? Bam, look at that. It's almost exactly the same as your Fairy Stars, and that's with very little investment into your Mughal Glory. So what if we just bring it up to 30? Okay, that's a very moderate amount of investment. Bam, it's already slightly better and just about the same as Fairy Stars, okay? So I would recommend using your Mughal Glory right now, especially if you can get it at level 35. So that's something to keep in mind. And also, just to reiterate, this is including the fact that almost none of your medals whatsoever have any attack skills on them at all. I would highly recommend putting an attack skill of some sort, an attack boost max skill of some sort on your Mickey at least, and as well as your Riku. I would also say put it on your copy medals too. You want to almost always have attack boost max skills on your copy medals, because out of all the medals in the game, copy medals are the most important, the best medals in the game, and they also get the most used. So it's no joke when I keep saying that copy medals are going to be the best investment that you can put into the game at any point in time. But that's it for today, guys. Josiah, I hope that helps you out. it was very interesting trying to figure out a setup for you because of like how clunky it was trying to make the fairy stars. For those of you watching, the fairy stars is one of the best keyblades in the game at the moment, but it's only really good if you have specific type of metals for it. Okay, otherwise the fairy stars can actually be pretty clunky to try to work with compared to other keyblades, and that's why the Mughal Glory allows a little bit more freedom. But other than that, if you enjoyed the episode, please leave a like and subscribe and hit that bell button. It's the best way to know when I upload more videos like this one. On top of, if you enjoyed the series and would love to help support the channel in a more direct way, feel free to check out my Patreon. Link is in the description below. But other than that, my name is Brian for Kingdom Hearts Senior Cross Nation, and I will see you guys in the next video. See you guys.